Welcome, everybody who's tuning in. Dandan's discussion on anti-Semitism will begin in about 8 minutes. Make sure you guys drop a like when you get into the room. Hey, Jacob. You should see what JP says about those who pursue nothing but pleasure. Basically, Pleasure Island from Pinocchio ensues. Yeah, that's true. That's why you want morally checked pleasurable pursuits in your life and be open to engaging in moral discussions about morality. It's not about, if your meaning or your purpose ends up simply being maximizing pleasure, yeah, you're going to get Pleasure Island. Fenton Mully says, dumb take, as long as we moderate ourselves, the pleasures aren't inherently evil. There are no inherently evil pleasures. No one said that. The dumb take is your response of saying dumb take and then straw manning what was said. Where's Dandan's image? I gotta load it. Oh man, where did I put that? There we go. We'll pick that. And awesome. let's get... Oh, Dandan will have to add his description after. That's okay. Why did that do that? There we go. Yeah, you guys jump on call in. You'll be able to call in and speak with Dandan very shortly here. Ooh, is this going to bug out on me when I go to start this room on here like last time? Let's see. Do my invites. Yep. Oh, it did bug out on me. Damn it. I'll have to start it up from my phone. That's okay. Go. All right, make sure I can join on here. Hey, Dandan, are you there?
Hello, are you hearing me now? Okay, let me restart the song then. Let me get this right. Okay, my bad. Let's restart, guys. Oh, you guys could all hear me? Oh no, there was just Travis. Okay. Whoops. So let's just get this started then. Can we just switch my mic over and be right going? Just want to make sure. Can you all hear me? Put in the chat that you can hear me. I had to switch a mic.
Sounds great, Dandan. We're getting a little bit of
perfect.
high res from you. I don't know if you
High res, excellent.
Just a little bit.
So the topic for tonight is going to be anti-Semitism. And the reason I thought it was important to bring anti-Semitism up is new statistics for 2020 were released by the FBI. And it showed that in the United States, Jews, and especially hate crimes towards Jews, are at the highest per capita. Right? I think hate crimes per 10,000 people for Jewish people is a rate of 1.9, whereas for blacks it is 0.53, Muslims 0.47, Asians 0.11, and Hispanics at 0.08. So anti-Semitism is definitely on the rise, and it's something that's really important to look at. And you know, what is the greatest, easiest platitudes is those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So we're going to take a small journey around the history of anti-Semitism. I'm specifically using who this guy is a source. His name is, where is this? There it is. It is Bernard Lewis. He's a professor of Near Eastern Studies at Princeton University. And he has a good article about this called The New Anti-Semitism. Plus, we're going to go over different historical evidences and ideas around it. So I want to start by simply defining anti-Semitism. Basic definition, which is hostility to or prejudice against Jewish people, or hostility towards / discrimination against Jews as a religious, ethnic, or racial group. Right? So we can each think of, like, you know, you think of really old ideas of anti-Semitism, real religious ones from the medieval times, right? You see the way Jews were treated during the Black Plague. You see how the Catholic Church pushed forward ideas of Jews killing Jesus as ways of promoting its Inquisition in Spain, pogroms, all of these issues that Jews faced historically. I think everyone's kind of aware of them. But it's important to recognize that
or so. Let's see how they react.
With the death of religiosity, we also
Did you guys lose Dandan there?
Yep. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Damn it. I have to unmute and mute myself. That's annoying. What was the last thing you guys heard me say? My apologies.
Sorry, I was just sharing the stream. I was a little bit preoccupied.
Where did you guys lose me?
Type it up in the chat, guys. Religiosity, Nivik
Bruce is
said.
in? Bruce?
Hey.
Yeah. What was the last point
we
you
lost
guys
you.
last
We
heard
lost
me?
you right at religiosity.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So at the death of religiosity, we also saw anti-Semitism change, right? So after the Enlightenment, the religious basis for anti-Semitism was seen as baseless, out of date. And this is where racial forms of anti-Semitism began. We find statutes in the 16th century Spain about the purity of blood la limpieza de sangre, where only people who could prove Christian descent for a specified number of generations could be accepted as genuine Christians. Purity of blood. This is an idea that started happening during the death of religiosity. There's even, I think it was a German philosopher, Max Puller, said Semitic was first used as linguistic, not as ethical or racial terms. Like Aryan, it was coined by philologists to designate a group of related languages. Aryan included languages as diverse as Sanskrit, Persian, and by extension Greek, Latin, and most Europe. Semitic similarity brought together Cyrillic.
Fuck. Oh man. I hit the wrong fucking button. That was 100% my fault. Shit. Ugh. It's a new app, guys. I love it, but sometimes if you click the wrong button, it fucks everything up. Ah.
Oh, okay. We've had some serious technical difficulties.
Yeah, we should be good now. I really need to get Colin to add are you sure you want to end the screen? Because sometimes when you
You were
leave
trying
the
to press
screen,
mute and you wrote close room, didn't you?
yeah, well, I think I accidentally tapped end room, but for some reason it didn't give me like anything after that. It just shut the entire stream down. Like there needs to be some kind of warning there. But I'll talk to the engineers about that. Sorry, Don.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We roll with the punches. So I think we're talking about the purity of blood. This idea of pure bloodedness post Enlightenment, the beginning of the Enlightenment ideas in Spain and Europe, etc., etc. We were talking about how Semitic was first used as a linguistic category, not a racial one. So the great German philosopher Max Müller pointed out that Aryan Semitic were philological, not ethnological terms, and that they speak more of languages. And he made a word. What would happen? What would arise if people confused the two? And this was actually a really interesting prediction that he made. So Semitic was transferred from its original linguistic meaning to a new racial meaning and became the basis for a new and different type of bigotry, right? The people who advocate for this bigotry spun religious prejudice because they saw themselves as modern and scientific. Their hostility toward Jews, they claim, was now no longer based on outdated religious ideas, right? You see very much as well like political philosophers doing the same thing. I don't know. We're not justifying the right of kings by a religious God given. It's simply that kings are either smarter or better off or have intrinsic experience, etc., etc. They were now enlightened people, and their hostility towards Jews also changed in the way they spoke about it. They started justifying it through rational, scientific, quote unquote, enlightenment principles. Now, I'm sure we're all aware of the end of that story, right? It kind of ends with the Third Reich and the Holocaust, fascism, which was inflamed by racism and bigotry all throughout Europe. And we all live in this world, this post-World War II society. The Holocaust was so awful, and that scientific racism and bigotry was so terrible that it's discredited the Third Reich. It discredited scientific racism or scientific anti-Semitism and left vacancy in the void that was left. Right, we have a power vacuum now. There's still prejudice, right? There's still this innate distrust of others, but now we need a new way to fuel that anger. This is where the third phase of anti-Semitism arises. This time, it's political, it's ideological, and it provides a modern disguise for these exact same sentiments that go back hundreds, if not thousands of years. So we have to kind of start asking ourselves, where can we really find the root and the beginning of this political anti-Semitism, right? I don't know if I've talked about it plenty of times on the server, but this idea we can really trace it back to the idea of cultural Marxism. Cultural Bolshevism, my bad. Cultural Bolshevism was a conspiracy theory that was created by the Nazis to kind of position the Jews as these elitist, communist, Marxist revolutionaries who were subverting the culture through academia and media and newspapers by making people, either be gay or lose their religiosity, etc., etc. So this is actually mirrored in contemporary American politics. Today, it's not called cultural Bolshevism, and it doesn't have the same tenor, but it is called cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism is basically a far-right anti-Semitic conspiracy theory where there is a continuing academic and intellectual effort to subvert Western culture, right? The theory claims that there's an elite of Marxist theories from the Frankfurt School, who happen to be a lot of Jews in the Frankfurt School, right? We look at many postmodern philosophers like Jacques Derrida, Noam Chomsky, these are Jews. Subverting Western society with a culture war that undermines Christian values of traditionalist conservatism and promotes cultural liberal values of the 60s counterculture, progressive politics, political correctness, misidentified as identity politics, and created by critical theory. This is the origins of cultural Marxism. And the question becomes, what does that look like today? So, has anybody ever heard of the concept of triple parentheses? I'm sure a lot of people haven't. But if you kind of go into alt-right spheres on the internet, you end up finding people who will write out comments or they'll at other accounts and they'll put those accounts in triple parentheses, 3 parentheses at the beginning and 3 parentheses at the end. This triple parentheses is basically an identifier for these groups to be able to say, hey, these are the Jews, there they are, we found them, right? Be aware, these are Jews. They're going to try to manipulate our society. We also saw the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, where hundreds of marchers, threw up Nazi salute, waved swastika flags, and shouted Zig Heil, the Jews will not replace us. There was the attack on 3 congregations, right, who shared the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh. In 2018, I think a media report released said that at least I think over 4.2 anti-Semitic tweets were shared and reshared over a 12-month period on Twitter. You see the banning of the book Mouse. You see political pundits like Whoopi Goldberg not recognizing the Jewish people as an ethnicity in its historical context. And the question becomes, why are we not seeing this new form of anti-Semitism? And I think a big part of it is that in many ways we like easy conspiracy theories, right? Like, a lot of people like the terms of the elite of Hollywoods are the ones who are manipulating the culture. And then you kind of start asking the question, well, where do they get funding from? On the left, you'll hear things like, oh, it's the Koch brothers. On the right, you'll hear, oh, it's George Soros. Both happen to be Jews. Right? And this ties back to the conspiracy theory of cultural Marxism, which really started in the 90s in the United States, where it always goes back to
Do you
some
mean
Jewish individual.
Bolshevism or Marxism, Dandan?
Yes, Travis?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. You said Marxism again. Did you mean Bolshevism?
Oh, you're cutting in and out, Trav.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know why I'm having issues. Yeah, sorry.
Try to unmute and unmute.
Can you hear me now, Dandan?
Oh, yes, I can. You sound clearer.
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know what's going on with my computer hookup. You just said the conspiracy of Marxism. Did you mean Marxism or Bolshevism? Or you said...
So, cultural Bolshevism was the predecessor to this, right? It would be like me saying that like proto-Semitic religions are Judaism. They're different, but they're related to one another. So cultural Bolshevism was in Germany, and it kind of tied Marxists with Jews in the same way that it's today they're tying Marxism with Jews. But you also see things parroted by the left. So they'll talk about like big oil companies trying to destroy society. And then they ask, well, all these oil companies getting their money? Well, it's the Koch brothers. And if you're on the right and you ask who's funding all these BLM movements, they'll say George Soros. But either way, you end up finding that there's this appeal to conspiracy, and at the top of it is either a group or an all-powerful Jew. Yeah. So I personally, as someone who's ethnically Jewish, see this as really annoying. One, I wish I was a part of this cabal of Jews. I would be super rich, but I'm not. But it's important to recognize that anytime anti-Semitism shows up historically, it shows up as a way of scapegoating the ills of society on a group of people. That's really how it's been. And in Western culture, it has specifically been Jewish people. Right? This is just how it's been. Even in the Western societies that the Muslims are a part, it's been Jewish people. Anti-Jewish Muslim conspiracy theories also exist. So I'm just going to run through the Frankfurt School conspiracy theories, just the basic points. And just remember, if you are on the right, some of these points you'll identify with, that I am not saying that you are anti-Semitic. I am simply saying that these are the points of the people who follow and parrot these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And in the same way that I have to, as someone who on the left has to really pay attention to the voices of anti-Semitism that I tend to align with me, tend to like my political ideas. If I was on the right, you would have to do the same thing with people who would stand next to you at a rally and be very close, paid close attention to what they're saying and who they are. A big way and a model that I like for thinking about why it is so important for us to be these antennas for anti-Semitism or bigotry or racism is Sam Harris's model of concentric circles. We know that if you look at violent jihad or violent Muslim extremism, I think Sam Harris says at the center of it are those who are willing to actually commit the offense, are willing to blow themselves up. And as you move further from the center, you might not be willing to take the action, but they might believe in some of the same ideas, or they'll play it off as not that dangerous, or it's only a select few. What we're seeing here is that instead of having these two groups oppose each other. They are simply willing to accept one another or to piggyback because of the same overall goal and tenor. So my point is that we need to be really adamant about pushing these groups to the side and identifying them as wrong, as you are not a part of me. You don't think like I do. Yeah, I might support police reform. Yes, I might support green energy, but I don't support BLM rioting in the streets. And I won't stand next to people who say that the reason why the oil barons are taking over America is because of a powerful Jewish group. We need to be very careful with that. So here are some of the points that people who believe in the Frankfurt School conspiracy theory believe in. So one of the things is a creation of racism offenses, that if you're racist, you get an offense and go to prison. Continual change to create confusion, right? You'll say things like, oh, they're consistently teaching sex and homosexuality to children. They're making them confused on purpose by being trans. The undermining of schools and teachers' authority. The destruction of American national identity through immigration. The promotion of excessive drinking, which today has been replaced with the promotion of excessive weed and drug use. The emptying of churches. An unreliable legal system with a bias against victims of crime, dependency on the state or state benefits, control and dumbing down of the media, and encouraging the breakdown of the family. Now, whether you make an argument that some of these things are true, it is important to recognize that people will use these as evidences for a grand Jewish conspiracy. And I think with that, if anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns, jump onto the chat and let's have a conversation about it. About anti-Semitism, what are your thoughts on it? How have you thought about it? Did anything I said was new or interesting? And we do only have with me, you have only 35 minutes. So if you're really trying to, you got to get on. Hey, Bruce, you're on.
Hey, Dan.
What's up, Bruce?
There is a lot of thoughts on the issue. I don't know which one to take, really. I guess the question I have most is just what irritates you the most, so we can focus on that in the discussion or the issue.
The thing that irritates me the most are people who are willing to stand next to either anti-Semites, specifically anti-Semites, and not denounce them for political gain. To me, this is backwards. It is partisan. I don't care that you're a Democrat, for example. I don't care that, for example, Ilhan Omar is a Democrat. She blatantly said some anti-Semitic things, and the party needs to recognize her for that. Not just simply sanction her, make her apologize, and then do some movement against hate in Congress. This is a person that should not be associated with. And the same thing on the right.
Yeah. So in other words, if someone has quality values that you agree with, but they also are an anti-Semite, you think that the anti-Semitic epithets that they throw around trump any other values that you might agree with.
Yeah, because the question then becomes, why are you using these values, right? What is the point? Why are you arguing with these values? Where's the next place you're taking this?
Yeah.
Right? Who's at fault here? If you're going to start saying that their fault is the Jews, right? Like AIPAC, as Ilhan Omar said, oh, Jews have dual loyalty, right? They're not actually Americans. Excuse you, what does that mean? What's the implication here?
I would say it depends on the type of Jewish person you're talking about. See, my issue isn't with the race of Jews at all. I never go that route. I have an issue with Judaism, right? And Zionism.
That's different though, right? And
but
this is
why the problem
is
I get in I get in the cart. People lump me into anti-Semitism because of the religious and political views I hold on Israel and on Christianity. And so, unfortunately, we're lumped into anti-Semites if we're not interested in Judaism and its tenets, or Zionism.
So a Bernard Lewis, who's a passed away professor who writes a lot on this topic, has said, and I quote, "There is a well-worn platitude that we have all heard many times before. It is perfectly legitimate to criticize the actions and policies of the state of Israel or the doctrine of Zionism without necessarily being motivated by anti-Semitism. The
Sure.
fact that this has been repeated ad nauseum does not detract from its truth. Not only do I accept it, but I would take it even a step further with another formulation, that perhaps much which would evoke surprise if not shock. It is perfectly possible to hate and even persecute Jews without necessarily being anti-Semitic." And this is
Right.
on his art. So the reason why we're saying this is because anti-Semitism is unique, right? It is
Yeah.
unique in the sense that it encapsulates both Jews as an ethnicity, as a group,
hmm
and it plays out in a societal way much more than it does an interpersonal way.
Yeah. So there's right, and there's a number of camps on the issue that I think get muddied. The waters get real muddy when you see people like, okay, for instance, there's a really controversial figure named E. Michael Jones, right? I'm sure you've heard of
Okay,
him.
who's that? I don't actually know who that is.
Oh,
E.
he's yeah.
Michael Jones.
So he actually wrote a book called, I think, The Revolutionary Spirit of Jewish Spirit or something like that, or Jewish Heart, something along
Okay.
those lines. So now, if you were to read some of what he says or listen to him, I believe he's a Catholic.
Yeah.
He has an ideological problem with Judaism and those who come out of Judaism, not Jews as a race. He actually goes so far as to claim there's no race. There's two people. There's those in Christ and those outside, and that's it. Like he doesn't. He goes as far as saying he's like the opposite of Jared Taylor, right? Who's into race. He's
Mm-hmm.
not into race. He's into ideologies, and he tends to say that there are certain ideologies that come out of Judaism that are unique to Judaism. I don't hold most of his tenets at all, or if any of them really, but his take is interesting because he's talking about the tenets of Judaism lead to many issues. Now, people make these claims
Right.
about
Okay.
Christianity and Islam as well.
But as you go forward, I'm quickly just reading a small things about him, and
hmm
I'm using the ADL as a source. So it's the first thing that
He's
showed
going
up.
to be
Was
thrown in as an
so their
anti-Semite
issue
for
is
sure.
they said even though he's critiquing Judaism, his issue becomes that they're saying that Jews are inflicting harm on the fabric of Western civilization.
Yeah, his
And
issue is
that's
with Judaism in the
but
same
no,
way
but the
people have an issue with
Judaism.
Islam.
But do you see where
See,
it
the
starts?
issue people have with Islam and their infliction upon the West or their aggression on the West is the same issue they're taking with Judaism. It's the same tact, same issue.
Well, the thing that I'll be careful with is that I actually don't think that Islam as a whole is an attack on the Western civilization. I think there could be radical Islamic groups who are at odds with Enlightenment society, but we have to be careful and listen to the dog whistles. For me, when I hear attack on Western civilization, my bells start ringing because it's a very ill-defined term, right? Judaism is a
Yeah,
part of
I mean,
Western
right.
civilization. Islam is a part of Western civilization.
Yeah.
So when he says Western civilization, is he saying European civilization? Does he mean white civilization? So I would be very careful here because, like I said,
he's specifically talking about Western Christianity specifically in his case, right? Which would people would largely claim as Europe and America. But what I'm trying to get at is the issues here are not necessarily skin deep or even race deep when it comes to these discussions with people that are throwing claims about Jewish people, because the claims aren't about Jewish people, they're about ideologies out of Judaism. That's the only thing I want to make like a little more clear in some of the nuance of the issue.
Doesn't this fall in line with my analogy of Sam Harris's concentric circles for Islam? He might not be in the middle of these circles, But he's definitely not distancing himself from these radicals. And not only is he not distancing himself from these radicals, from according to the extremist affiliations part of his biography on the ADL, is that a Jewish revolutionary spirit is cited amongst Holocaust deniers. David
Oh
Duke.
yeah, dude. They have exactly. There's that. Well, see, some of the things that's difficult.
Now that also that Jones has sought support from them, from conspiracy radio hosts such as Hisham Tawali, Henry Macau. So he is associating with them, right?
Yeah, I understand. And there's two, right. And I'm not defending the guy. I don't really like the guy. I'm only bringing this up as a sort of, position of nuance on my side of it.
Would knowing this, why not classify him as an anti-Semite though?
Well, that's the issue, I guess, is because when I think of anti-Semite, it's, it's somebody that's anti-Semitic for issues of race and nationality, not of Judaism or theology.
Right? Okay. So, but this is why maybe you missed I think you were here for the first part where I said that it's important to recontextualize anti-Semitism, not just in its historical foundations, which were both religious and ethnic, but it's a much more modern conception.
Yeah, the issue political. There is but the issue there is I don't know where. See, the problem is I don't know where it puts someone like me or others, because we're lumped into anti-Semitism.
I know I've had tons of conversations with you, and personally, I don't think that you are an anti-Semite. I actually
Jewish family.
I really don't. But so, like for example, you can take specific criticisms, right? Or you can even, but I don't think that you think that Jews are as a part of subverting Western culture. And if someone like the KKK wanted to talk with you and platform you, and would you then platform them on your book and give them accolades and stuff? No, you would have an issue with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be one of the problems with it though. Here's this, and I do agree with you. I would not, but the problem here is like getting a message out. I think people like Jones or others, they'll look at anywhere they can get a megaphone, despite their value, and it's a problem. Like it's a character issue.
Well,
right, because you're just trying to get
whether it's I can't. I'm not a mind reader, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to create schemas around whether or not the person's intention, because I'll never really know that unless I sit down and interview them. But if it sounds like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it walks around in a gaggle of ducks, and I'm gonna call it a duck, right?
Yeah, and that's the issue of where just like you were saying, like if someone were to listen to you or see you somewhere, they might just throw you into the pile of insane leftists that are inciting violence in places, right? But you would claim, no, I'm not a part of that. But it would be difficult.
But I also denounce it, right? But I also denounce it. I think if you speak to me for a second rather than just look at me, or you read the stuff that I've wrote, it's clear to see I don't fit in directly with that crowd. I don't even hang out with them.
Okay. So, but if someone says, I denounce, organization A through Z and these people, but I still feel this specific way, is that okay, or at least acceptable, or does it still become an issue? It's sort of like it doesn't matter in that case, because in the court of public opinion, I don't know that it matters.
Yeah, so in the court of public opinions, right, it's a difficult position. But if we're just talking strictly from like an analysis point of view, I think the line would be somewhere very simple. We'll say, I am simply talking of Judaism as a religion. I don't believe that anyone who grew up with that Jewish religion is a corrupted or whatever it might be. I'm simply talking about tenets, and I think that these tenets have issues with Christian tenets, yada yada yada. You're on a fine line, but you have to be very careful. I would say in that respect, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. I don't know what other people think, but I think I am. So long as that line is you point to that line, you're clear to that line, and you're aware what crossing that line looks like.
Right, and I just. The only reason I wish to speak on it specifically is because that line is sometimes not drawn or even visible by someone like me, and then I'm just tossed into a pile of alt-right white supremacist Klan members, and that's kind of nuts, right? I mean, that's not me at all. But
Yeah,
because there's an apologetic issue with Christianity, you're rolled into that position. You know what I mean?
yeah, but I think in general with our hyper partisan time period, right? Like you said, like after speaking to me, you definitely know I'm not some like SJW psycho, but
Yeah,
I
I
do end up
understand.
agreeing,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah, but that's
right.
just partisan stuff. I think that
Yeah,
when the way I speak about it, and I think that anybody should speak about it, should be a lot more from the line of analysis rather than from the line
okay,
of trying to
sure.
individually pick people out. It's about
Yeah,
being able to
there's
identify
another.
it politically rather than just individually.
Right.
Because individually, it's so easy to do that. We've all been trained to do that. Our parents and our grandparents have all lived through the society that did that. Like we are in a way more past that. We have really done a lot of work, right? The way it is educated in school, the way we read history about it. This is why it's important to recognize that when we look at anti-Semitism today, it is much more political, right? It moved from religious to
Yeah, yeah.
scientific,
Which
racial to political anti-Semitism.
I would also argue that in the early church, it was also political. People like to categorize church and religious issues in early church history as purely religious, but because religion was political, it was mostly political in many of the
Yeah,
cases.
yeah, yeah. So
So
no, I agree with that, but I'm saying that when you look at the at least ideological grounding for it, they grounded it in religion.
yeah,
Right, the
that's true.
ideological grounding for anti-Semitism today is things like George Soros, Koch brothers,
Yeah,
subversion. Right, that's what I'm saying, just from an
yeah. No,
ideological perspective.
I totally get it. And it's weird how the alt right or just the hard right and the left, the hard left, have a strange shaking of hands when it comes to anti-Zionism. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I've noticed that. There are people
Yes.
that take the side of Palestine on the left, and there are those that take the side of anti-Israel, maybe not pro-Palestine, but anti-Israel on the right. And they're in a strange position to kind of be friends in that regard. And I find myself in the middle of that whole mess, with a land without a team, right? A man without a party, because that's
Hmm.
crazy town, right? I can't get into that.
I agree.
But there's one issue though that's somewhat similar. Is like there there is a statistic around IQ and Jews, right? I mean, at least there are a few recognizable ones around Ashkenazi Jews. But I mean, this is I don't want to get into an IQ discussion, but I'm just saying like some people would cite that as a I don't know an advantage or a disadvantage, right? I don't know, but there's some characteristics related to that. I was wondering your thoughts on that idea.
So I think that IQ, yes, it has biological underpinnings, but I think this biology, in a brute way, only accounts for what, like half a point of IQ, really. Most of it is environmental. Most of it is through education, um, and Jewish communities tend to do well in that respect. I don't think that it has anything directly to do with IQ, and less to do with culture, more to do with wealth and education and things like
So
that.
wouldn't it
And
be fair? Would it be fair to maybe characterize, maybe in America at least, the issue of anti-Semitism is almost an anti-classist, but it's disguised as anti-Semitism, or it's low resolution.
and in many ways, it can. It's really a scapegoating, right? Because yes, you have a lot of Jews that are very wealthy. A big part of it is because usury was illegal by the Catholic Church, so many
Yeah,
Jews
yeah,
were forced to take on loaning and banking. So
yeah,
that's really where a lot of that wealth comes from. And also, when you
yeah.
look at
Agreed.
Europe, Germany, Austria, these areas, when you look at like the Council of Vienna, Freud, Adler, these were Jews. Einstein, they were Jewish. They were very high in the German academia. So when
Yeah,
they moved to Israel, they moved to the States. They brought their professions with them, right? They brought their expertise. So it lingers over from that era. Um,
yeah,
so I wouldn't say
yeah.
it's just
I would
classist.
say yeah.
It's right. Classism wouldn't necessarily just explain anti-Semitism. It's its own thing, and it comes from a history, a European history, Western history specifically, of scapegoating Jews and Judaism.
Yeah, no, I feel you on it. There's one other little point I wanted to make, then I'm gonna get going because you have other people to talk to, and I have to get going. I actually find, as far as my specific, I don't know if you've heard this before, I find that the Jewish people are largely at a disadvantage when theologically. I believe that their wealth and their position of high wealth in many of them is a burden. And I know it seems strange to say that, but like I think that they're reaping what they've sown as far as like Christianity is concerned. And so having large amounts of wealth is extremely difficult for almost anyone. Power and money are hard to manage. So giving someone that burden of wealth management, I think is a disadvantage. And I know, like, if you're into materialism, you would think it's a great thing, but I would say no. It's a huge problem to manage money at that level and maintain your moral standing.
Okay, that's an interesting take. I got to think about that more.
Yeah, but I just wanted to throw that. Like, I don't know if people get into that very much, but anyway, yeah, I'll talk to you later, man. It was good talking to you.
Okay, good talking to you, Bruce. Let's get Jonathan in here. What's going on, Jonathan? You're live. Jonathan?
How's it going? Can you hear me?
How you good? Yeah, I can hear you. Sound great. Nice and clear. Is that a picture of you skateboarding?
Yeah, that's me doing a 360 flip down some stairs.
That's absolutely epic. My younger brother, when we were young, would do a lot of street skating. Now, I wasn't that good, so I would end up filming, but he was great. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I think that, like I said in the chat there, that the Jews actually gave us the epitome of slave morality.
From the Nietzschean perspective of slave morality, you're speaking?
Well, I mean, I thought that was his pretty much his idea, right? Like the whole slave morality thing was Nietzsche's idea. So I'm not sure what you mean by like Nietzschean perspective of slave morality. Like I wasn't aware that other people had their own. But I mean,
after Nietzsche, right? Other people have looked at the idea and thought about it in many different ways. But I think it's important not to recognize that Nietzsche is necessarily saying that slave morality is a bad thing or a wrong thing. I think he's just saying that the idea was that morality shifted from one of nobility, being the prime of that which is morally right, to the fact that,
regardless of what he thought about it, like his personal opinion on it, like I do agree that it is Christianity is a perfect example of slave morality. In fact, Nietzsche said that quite bluntly that Christianity came about from Jews being enslaved, that it was a thing that evolved in Jewish communities when they were enslaved. So, for example, the main point would be is that this goes against everything in terms of the Übermensch. If you're trying to strive towards the Übermensch, you got to get rid of things like Christianity. Christianity will be the ultimate impediment, or just slave morality doctrines in general will be the ultimate impediment towards your goal, to striving towards the Übermensch, and which, by the way, is the people who sign up for that, that goal, that worldview of striving towards the Übermensch. They're going to feel like they have a moral obligation to do this, right? To get rid of things like Christianity. I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, I think that you're reading Nietzsche in a similar way.
Ignore Nietzsche though, like, because I don't want to get into an argument about like what Nietzsche thought. I just want to know if like you could see this perspective.
I mean, I can see people will
for example, do you see Christianity as kind of like if you're trying to usher in a culture, if you're trying to have a culture where the weak worship the strong, because you feel like that's a necessary aspect of striving towards a society worth living in, You don't want a society that persecutes the strong, attacks the strong,
I
and
mean, I
holds
don't know
them
about
down.
you. I don't know about you, but when I look at the Midwest and when I look at mega churches, I think their use of Christianity has been very powerful in creating a society that worships the wealthy and the strong.
But I think Christianity, at its core, gives the weak and the poor an identity. Right. That's one of the major developments, I think, that something like Christianity offered society. Before, people didn't really care about poor people. People didn't really care about the weak. And all of a sudden, these people have an identity, and these people demand religious persecution for the strong, right? Pretty much. Like all the strong people, they're just riddled with sin. You have religious
Right.
ideas along the
but
lines of, if you're
you're
rich,
speaking.
good luck getting into heaven.
You're speaking of but a lot of people who are Christian don't take those verses seriously, or ignore them, or aren't aware of them.
Well, that's irrelevant. Like,
I don't think it's irrelevant.
You're trying to say? You're trying to say that Christianity ultimately has a net positive?
No, I think that we have to look at religion and religious texts not as intrinsic ideas that specifically cause A or B, but it's important to look at them historically as documents that are simply used to manipulate, used to change. It's not like ideology first. It's not like the ideology.
Well, I disagree because I come from a Jungian perspective. I think that, like, a Jungian quote would be that men don't have ideas, ideas have men. And I come from that perspective. I think ideas are just floating around out there, and people get ideologically possessed and swept up in these ideas. And I don't think
I actually see that people do get swept up in ideas, but I don't think it's simply because the attractiveness of the idea itself. I think that a lot of it has to do with also the material conditions that are surrounding them to begin with to get attracted to an idea. You look at Jonathan Haidt's example of the elephant rider, right? Many of the time we think we're in control, but we're an elephant rider trying to justify the movements of the elephant. In many ways, the things that we get addicted to or the things that we get ideologically possessed to are not simply things because of the idea is attractive or in some way beautiful or sublime, but rather the material conditions, what's happening in our everyday life, whether we have money or not, whether we have food or not, the way our society is structured, our emotions that get us caught to ideas specifically. And Christianity, when you're poor and destitute, gives you one thing, but when you're rich and wealthy, gives you another. And that's how it's been historically. So I don't see how that Jungian hypothesis follows through.
What don't you see?
How that exactly. Jung's ideas around being ideologically possessed follows through when the evidence.
Well, I think what I was countering there is that you apparently feel that, like, you were like, oh, well, Christianity has been used a certain way. I wasn't sure if you were just trying to say it's been used as a net positive, like there's been some good, it's been used for good or something. But
also that also the thing it's been used for.
What I'm trying to say is I don't agree with you that people have that much control, right? Maybe we can get into free will and how we don't really have it, but that's kind of the point, right? Is that there's really just this animus or this driving force in terms of
So I want to person
involved, right? Ideas, it's almost like they take up a life of their own, and you can trace the evolution of ideas and their influence.
But
on us.
We have to start. But we as people who make analysis, and we have to try to identify these ideas and test them and follow them and try to see their trends and make predictions. We can't do that through ideology, no matter how much Jungian theory you apply, Freud's theories, Adler's theories, right? This is like early onset psychoanalysis, psychodynamic stuff. You saw Lacan trying to do it, etc. These things have been very difficult to do. What we can do, and what we have been able to measure and predict people's ideology based off of is their material conditions. That's much been easier to trace. Not like the ideas take a life of their own is interesting, but we have to examine that forward. And from what I've seen, that it's not the case.
What isn't the case exactly?
That we can look at an ideology and know which way it's going to go, or how it's
Yeah, but
going to be
that's
interpreted and where it's going to
okay.
lead. The
Sure.
reverse is true. We look at the material conditions and we can see how people's ideology is going to bend and move based on those. So
Okay.
I give those more primacy.
Okay. But when you look at this war of ideas, if you look at the evolution of thought, Christianity's place in it, it just happens to be that it is the epitome of slave morality.
Sure.
Right. So all you have to do to reach a sort of anti-Semitism is essentially be someone who feels like you have this moral obligation to usher in the next stage of our human evolution, that the weak should serve the strong. And essentially you reach a place where really quick, you reach a place where you would identify Christianity or slave morality doctrines as the ultimate enemy, right? So if the Jews gave us Christianity, you see the link there. You've already reached
I see the
anti-Semitism because they have given us the epitome of slave morality.
I see the conceptual link. I just don't think this conceptual link gives us any real utility to predict and understand where we're going to see anti-Semitism or we aren't going to see anti-Semitism.
Yeah, who cares if it has any utility in doing that, though?
Because how else do I know if something's
true? It's just an observation.
Yeah, but how am I supposed to know if the observation is true? People make tons of dubious synthetic observations all the time. It's not.
You can't know 100% if it's true or not. That's fine. You could just conceptualize. Like I said, this gets into evolutionary psychology and a sort of Jungian perspective on ideas.
Yeah, but so Jung and evolutionary psychology don't have really much to do with each other. Carl Jung and his writings.
I'm just saying that people, like, for example, I'm used to arguing that religions are a really fundamental part of who we are. You get rid of religions, people just replace religion with other dogmas. And this is because of this is just our biology. Like, we can't escape this stuff. Like,
so Jonathan, I think our conversation,
we naturally want to be religious.
Real quick, I think our conversation, this one specifically, around Jung and ideology and possession, ideological possession, and all that type of stuff, the dialectical ideas, we can. I'm gonna have another episode another time, definitely about Jung. I majored in psychology. It's something that I've learned, so I would love to have that conversation.
Okay, just to be clear though, the only reason why Jung came up is because I'm trying to explain to you how someone could reach a sort of anti-Semitism.
Yes,
by simply looking at the evolution of thought and the Jews. And I don't think
that gives us a good explanation of how someone gets to anti-Semitism. I think it's a nice post hoc idea, but I don't think it gives us any.
You don't think it follows?
I think it might follow. So what if it follows? I'm talking about empirical stuff. It's an entailment.
Like I said before, if you take these ideas seriously, it's very easy. It's just an entailment that you would identify the Jews as the people who gave us the slave doctrine, slave morality doctrine, as Nietzsche would put it, right?
Yeah, but I really don't want to get bogged in about this. Like, this is not the point. We can talk about that another time.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to say one last thing. I think that if you want a good argument for what you're looking for, this anti-Semitism stuff, this is it. You would have to address.
Yeah, I disagree. Right? I disagree wholeheartedly.
Okay. Well, what else do you think is better? Have you heard a better critique here?
I brought up that I think that your idea that it's
just
through the evolution of ideology.
Just me that what I've said, there is an entailment. It does follow, but you just
okay.
disagree with
So let me explain. A lot of things can follow logically. It doesn't mean that their logical conclusions are true.
True. You're not.
It doesn't mean. It doesn't mean. Yes, until I can see that these data points are somehow measured and give us some sort of pragmatic utility in understanding and predicting these things, I don't care about them.
You don't care that Christianity is a perfect example of slave morality.
I said sure because I was not trying to argue that. I don't think it's a perfect.
I just don't think you're engaging, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine with you. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I was wanting to talk about how you could, what I was saying very easily leads to anti-Semitism, but you're giving up.
It's not about I'm giving up, is that you're just pushing it forward, and I'm not trying to have this dominance game with you. No, we have to have the discussion another
time.
Dude, okay, I'm just going to kick you off. You're going to have to go another time. I'm sorry. Hello, Nevik. Yeah. Interesting. Very, very interesting. You guys shouldn't. I just want to also say I wasn't trying to like argue about whether Jungian ideology regarding how ideas move and develop is right or wrong. And in the same way, I wasn't trying to give an example of how people gain an ideology and move forward with it. That wasn't oh, come on. Relax yourself, Jonathan. I'm just trying to say that wasn't my aim. My aim was to talk about anti-Semitism, and I think when we saw our disagreement, we weren't going to move forward without going somewhere else. Don't get so butthurt. It's okay. I do have to go in 2 minutes because it is a second at a Passover. So Nivik, give me your last thing, and then I think Trav will take over. Nivik, going once, going twice, going thrice.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. I what he was saying. I'm not gonna get into that. I just was saying it just seems like it's just human nature of people doing things for their selfish interests and with the slave morality and thinking somebody should that somebody should service them because they're better.
I see. So, well, I saw that you posted something in the chat. Because let's just get to the point. Because I really do have to go. And I wanna answer your question or your comment.
Well, like what I kind of like had a view in the like in where we are now, and we're in understanding how things are now, and the past that led up to it. So like a lot of the past cultural practices in discrimination against Jews in societies to blame for its dysfunction. A lot of that was did. I think what you're saying, and you can see it with race in discrimination against marginalized along race, right?
What do you mean?
And you can see a similarity like with Hitler when he saw the nationalism in America and racial segregation and adopting its views.
Sure.
And seeing it as a useful political tool to get power in scapegoating.
You're saying that a lot of people might adopt anti-Semitism for that same reason.
Yeah, and
I would agree with you.
Since anti-Semitism has such a long, rich history of discrimination going back to the Middle Ages. It's just and by the way, that wasn't the first time they were forced to wear the Star of David. It was done to Jews in the Middle Ages as well.
Yes, I'm aware.
And the thing about it is, I think the explanation is these inferior beings in society along the lines of race. If they are what you say they are, you have to have someone to blame because it's not them who are conspiring, right? Because they don't really have the capability to do so. It has to be something else, right? That's more competent in doing that. That's of a European culture, of course. So
sure. Nevik, I'm sorry I have to cut you off, but I do have to run. My whole extended family is waiting for me. It is the second at a Passover, everyone. So I'm sorry to cut. I have to leave, but Travis will take over. So everyone, I'm sure everyone have a happy Passover if you're Jewish. If you're not, enjoy it anyhow. So have a good night, everyone. And I'll probably be on the Discord later around 11ish. So if anyone wants to come and continue the conversation, I would love to talk to you, John. Then Chag Sameach to Ellie. So anyone who's wants to talk later, John, too, you're welcome. We will talk young then. I just wanted to keep the conversation on topic, and I wanted to move to other callers. So I'm sorry if it was short and it was bad for everyone, but I'll see you guys next week, and I'll publish the topic soon. I haven't quite decided, but I think it's going to be something juicy. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of wanted like Dandan's thought since he's Jewish. What is his opinion on that? You know, and how he would take it. So like, Well, no, I was just giving him my view of what if you think to explain to get an understanding of what's going on now in the past history of it and the relation the relationship with with the discrimination of Jews and the tying in it with people in society who are making well no I mean like people who are outsiders of American society coming in them coming in it's really the Jews that are behind it, right? They conspire to do the bad. No, no, well, that's funny. No, I'm just trying to like get an understanding of what people believe. I don't believe it, and I'm trying to like reason it out. John too, who he was taught. Oh, he left. Okay.
Well, I'll give a. Can you hear me? All right, let me give this a quick try, and this might fix it. Hold on. All right, can you hear me better now? Okay, sorry about that. Well, I don't think that I am in any ways an expert on anti-Semitism, but I would say that I did grow up as kind of a secular Jewish person, and I don't feel that I personally experienced too much because I didn't wear anything that really made it so obvious that I was Jewish. So the only people that knew I was Jewish were people I told. But one thing, if you look at the statistics, like from the FBI's hate crimes index, it is kind of astonishing that there is no minority that gets more hate crimes than the Jewish community. Yet it is very rarely, in my experience, talked about. Like recently, there's the huge uptick in Asian crime that was making all the headlines, and then there's always all the talk about the hate crimes against African Americans,
Why do
but
you
for
think
some
it's more
reason,
against Jews?
and I was gonna say that was possibly one area, and it does happen. That I do think, on average, if you take a person from the Jewish community, on average, they're going to be more successful than someone not from the Jewish community. I'm not
Why is that?
necessarily. Why is that? Well, I can only speculate. I'm sure um, it might have something to do with peer pressure. I mean, the same thing with the Asian community, where if you take someone on average from the Asian community, they on average are going to typically earn more money than someone outside of the Asian community. And I assume that there's some cultural influences there, some
You
expectations.
kind of answered your question before. You said it wasn't as easy to discriminate against you as a Jew because nobody really knew. You never told anybody. But a person of color, it's a little different, right?
Hmm.
It's pretty obvious
And
that
so,
you're black, right?
yeah, and so, but it's interesting that generally speaking, there is much less crime against the Asian community than against the Jewish community. However, it's probably easier, generally speaking, to tell if someone is Asian than if someone is Jewish. And so, but I do think there is.
You know,
I
blacks
was
were
just gonna say,
doing
I do
pretty
think
weren't doing
one
bad in
component.
Nazi Germany during the times of Nazi Germany. They were walking around okay compared to the Jews.
Uh,
I guess that's because they
and
were
I don't.
burning. They're exterminating them. So, of course, they'd have it harder, right?
Hmm. And I think in the go on. Oh, sure. Thank you.
Okay.
No, don't do that. I want to hear from Johnny. He's making good points.
Okay. First of all, I gotta apologize. I'm here. Can you hear me? No, 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 no. Wait, wait,
I
wait.
don't see it.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Now, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Shit. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'm new to this call-in, so thank you for being brave and taking me off mute. In hearing the things that your callers have talked about, as well as you and your other host who logged off for Pesach, I think there's really two main things at stake, and one of which was kind of touched on. So the first of which is that Jews occupy this liminal space where we're both white and not white, which are terms I don't like, but whatever, we use them. And so throughout history, they've kind of occupied this area of are they insiders? Are they outsiders? We don't really know. And it's certainly no excuse, but I think it makes it easier for them to be an enemy. So I think it's that kind of unknown. And then very sadly throughout history, I think that unknownness has sort of led them to be more easily targeted and blamed for society's ill. So I think that's the first part is liminality. And the second one is power. I think that anti-Semites, I do believe, are ultimately threatened by Jewish power. And by the way, I'm just going to put my cards on the table, I'm Jewish if it wasn't obvious. And I think that majority groups are oftentimes intimidated by minority groups asserting power and a strong identity. And I think that when we combine the power plus unknown, it it makes them really a target. So I don't know if that's something others want to discuss tonight, but that's how I kind of think about it. And I know Ruth Weiss, who was a professor at Harvard, has written about it extensively. I want to just, I love what you're saying, and if it's okay, I want to just gently push on that a little bit. So the first category being about this like perceived economic power, that used to be the case, but actually a demographic that is rapidly outpacing Jews socioeconomically is Mormons. It is Mormons. The Jews are not doing so well. I'm not very proud to say that. Also, Orthodox Jews, if you look at the very, very religious communities in parts of New Jersey and parts of New York, many of them very sadly are dependent on a lot of like state assistance like welfare and food stamps. So just kind of offering that. The second thing is I want to talk a little bit about what I mean when I talk about power. Because I think especially in the year 2022, that's a very loaded term. I don't think of power as necessarily economic success, but more like power and strength of identity. So feeling proud of who you are as an ethnic group, as a religious group or whatever. And I think that the real problem is when Jews, and I sometimes see this with other minority groups, assert some kind of like strength in terms of their identity. That's when people have a problem with it.
Can I say one thing, Ellie? I don't think if somebody wanted power through corruption, the negative repercussions that come of your acts in society, it's good to not take any accountability, responsibility for it by just saying it's the Jews. It's a way of
I don't think I understand the premise of the question. Could you rephrase it?
So if you're doing something in a dysfunctional way, and you don't want to be held accountable for it, it's good to have an other in society that is marginalized and doesn't really hold any sizable power in it to just scapegoat them. They are. It's a good way. It's a good. Okay. If I'm doing something bad, I don't want to get blamed for it. You blame somebody else. Is pretty much what I'm saying. How's that?
Sure. So are you saying Jews are singled out?
You could, yes. You can. It's convenient for enablement of my dysfunctional ways. So anything that goes wrong, it's just good to have them on the sideline, to not be held accountable for anything. So I can piss, I can knock shit over, whatever. I'm not gonna get the blame for it. It's the Jews, of course, that did that. And everybody who have and if a person have a negative viewpoint about them, you can never really trust them. They're shifty and everything. They'll say absolutely they'll buy it because their biased thinking would automatically. They're not interested in any type of objective fact. The negative biases that they have is just confirmed when you say it's a Jew, of course, and it's kind of like, well, of course, no explanation is needed, no type of evidence is needed at all. People would absolutely just accept that of course that is the Jew that's behind everything. That is wrong.
Can I say back to you what I think you're saying? Because I want to make sure that I hear you and I understand. Is what you're saying like in a country or throughout history or a moment in history or whatever, the Jews who had achieved some kind of economic success or had like
I'm saying corruption in society, they're useful to be scapegoats.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, can you hear me? Yay, yay, you can hear me great. Look, first of all, I want to okay, first of all, I want to apologize. I didn't get to hear your presentation. I was out there trying to set up my own show and figure out how calling works. Go ahead. Okay. 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 So I kind of disagree with the scapegoating thing, and I want to talk about it in the context of history, and spirituality.
Johnny, you're not being. I can't. Nobody can hear you. No, bring him up. Bring him up. Don't get rid of him.
I think. Go. Yeah.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay? Right on, cool. I think as a non-Jewish person, I definitely, I'm glad we're having the conversation, and it sounds like Don had started us out there, obviously before he went to dinner. I definitely wonder like how terms are used in society and how people come to believe certain ideas that are either old ideas or new ideas. Correct me if my history is wrong, but I think that during the Middle Ages, um, part of the reason why certain jobs were offered to people of different, ethnicities or groups or whatnot is if they were or were not allowed to take them potentially in culture. And one of the challenges there is that with economic success in the 19th century or the 20th century and the 21st century, like you have 400 years or even more within the Catholic Church of like degradation from the Catholics towards the Jews. And so you add on top of that like mythology of, I don't even really want to talk about it, but it was like the one mythology of like Jewish persons like eating Christian kids or some shit like that.
Yeah, the blood libel.
Yeah, which is just total. When you build that online today, and the horrific shit show we find ourselves in, of people going online and saying like, yes, it's not just my belief; it's a factual thing that like the reason why society is falling apart is because of this reason or that reason, and then they go to blame one ethno group like Ellie was talking about a couple of minutes ago. Like, this is anti-Semitism is, to me, is as bad as quote unquote racial prejudice to other races, because it's just a continual process where one group of humans alienates another as the other again. And not only is it religiously based, but it's also like, using 19th century pseudoscience that, the Germans used in the 30s to create the laws they did, and then World War II. I'm really cautious on a topic like this because people's lives are at stake and they're not my own, and I think that, sometimes people like to mess around, like, Jonathan was talking earlier about trying to talk about philosophy and whatnot, which may be important to bring up, but I'm very cautious about giving certain ideas legitimacy that then lead to like they go from ideology to potential action, because a certain portion of the population unfortunately is so bigoted, either because of their poor economic condition or whatever brainwashing they've had growing up, that they then hear some ideas like the blood libel that Ellie just said, and they believe that's real. Like they don't. Yeah. No. No. No, I'm not. You're right. I'm not arguing that at all. But I am like, the fact that ideas can grow, the fact that when we put certain ideas like on the playing field, that a person comes to say like, oh, I basically I found this online and this is like, a legitimate thing. like it's almost, well, sure. Do you, I can, yeah, I can agree with that. Do you also see though that the phenomena effect of literally like how much anti-Semitism was brewing in Germany post World War One, and then in a 20-year period, because of the socialization of ideas that started to gain traction. Let's be honest, a lot of it because of bullying, intimidation, fascism, and whatnot.
Guys, I
But
just
that,
want to interject for a moment, and I'm sorry to cut you off because what you're saying is really important.
sure.
Anti-Semitism, very, very sadly, has a very rich history. In Germany, there's an excellent book called Hitler's Willing Executioners, and I believe he starts with Luther and unpacks that history. So that doesn't negate what you're saying, but I want to just add that layer.
Sure. Yeah. Uh, yeah.
Right, Luther was before Hitler, yes.
Yeah. And I hope I apologize. I'm sorry. I was not trying to infer. I know that history as well. I guess the point I was making is just that specific area where you had a spike. You you had whatever anti-Semitism you had by 1919 around the world, and then in that period, the spike was so insane that it obviously the atrocities that were committed. Um. So yeah, sure, sure.
There are people who think that Friends is a funny show. They are real. There are people walking this earth who think that Friends is funny.
Good point.
I say this
Yeah.
as a Jew. If Jews were involved in the creation of Friends, I'm a little like, okay, I get it. You guys don't like it. Like,
I think I think Nivik wanted to say something.
No, I agree.
Okay. Yeah, Trav, the point I was trying to make, and again, push back as you've been doing if you want, is just that, like, I don't want to give life to an ideology that can take human consciousness to the dark places we have been before. And I know that, like you said, we do need to have the discussions because silence will eventually let the idiots let their ideology grow. But I'm just cautious on that, I guess, is what I'm saying. Oh, yeah. I am in full agreement with you there, and I think Daryl Davis is a national treasure, and he has really put his money where his mouth is to, if you will, go into the lion's den. Yeah, I just, again, when, like I've said before on other talk stuff, when it's come up, I have to voice that concern, because I think it has additional validity to the conversation. I don't want to silence conversation, but I also, I think, like you said, if there's the active process of calling people out when their ideas are not just flawed in logic, but like shutting down stuff, that not shutting down, appropriately having opposition to ideas that will potentially continue to spread violence in society. I stopped mid-thought. Yeah, 100%. You can have the extremisms fluctuate between all people, not just well, and like you said, have the conversations on it, that are moving towards a more humane world. But yeah, we could get. Yeah, I don't even, like, we could go. I don't even want to go down that road right now. Yeah. Yeah. Do I think? Can you repeat that one more time? I think you have to look at the measure of, you have whether you have evidential or experience on your metric of, like, what logic and reasoning have they used, what examples. I mean, there's definitely, I think there's a few in that line. What was your follow-up? Sorry.
And I want to hear what Brett and others have to say, but I feel like that's where morality comes in. And I think that sometimes the word morality is something people like bristle at, like we picture like Joel Osteen or something. But something could be logical, it could have a utilitarian argument to it, it could be very efficient, but there's no morality. Like I think of how we talk about disabled people or the elderly. Like it could be logical that an 89-year-old person in a wheelchair doesn't, it doesn't have a utility in society, but they, just like every single person in this conversation, is created in God's image, and that's where moral values come in. So that's what I would say, but I would love to hear what others think about that.
Travis. Oh.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I just had 3 concerns about having an actual Nazi on your platform. Of course, you can do whatever you feel is best. But one is that somewhere, in my guess, between 5 and 10% of people are very, very easily swayed. And if they listen to a 5 or 10-minute segment where this Nazi is doing a better job saying something than whoever you have calling in, that may have recruited somebody for that person. Additionally, it gives that person it gives other crazy people who have the same ideology a person to join their influence. And then lastly, I would say that Biden meets directly with Kim Jong Un. There's too much of a difference in position. One of them is a much more respected leader in the world, and the other is I don't want to talk about him, but so it almost legitimizes. And so I do think if there's 2 points that are close to each other, it makes good sense to have the discussion. But when one of them is truly like a vile ideology, I don't know, that's for the most part rejected, I think, by 99%. I don't know. I'm not suggesting that the authorities shut down someone who wants to have the discussion, but I'm suggesting that I don't I just not saying that the authorities should do anything. I'm just saying that you may be giving a platform to a person who has an ideology that has already been widely rejected by the public. Well, I was talking about the. Yeah, I guess I'll listen and I'll learn more, but I really don't know much about it. I get it. I'm just there has to be some level of conscious thought put into it. Like, for instance, going back to the president of the United States meeting with the North Korean dictator, or versus meeting with the president of France. And you may feel that the president should be willing to meet with dictators. So in this example, I'm kind of comparing you to the president, and I'm comparing the Nazi to, say, the North Korean dictator, and whether or not you want to. Okay.
I
Fair
think you
enough.
guys are both right. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
It'll be interesting. You were the one who had just kind of made the comment that he would like to delete Jews, which I'm not. I've never heard of this person, and I don't know anything about common National Socialist ideology. So I'll listen in on Sunday and I'll learn something. But those were just my concerns.
I think you guys are both right. Sometimes you isolate, sometimes you don't. And you just have to know when you are and when you're not to do that. Because like if a person moves in a negative way towards others, then sometimes maybe